Welcome to 10 out of 10. I'm Mark Schumacher, and this is our 10-minute podcast where we want you to take 10 key elements away from it so that this is a valuable use of your time. And today I'm very, very happy to have as my guest Billy Lindler. Billy's the president and CEO of USSI Partners. When it comes to warehousing, distribution centers, I mean, anything dealing with design, layout, warehouse equipment, racking, you name it, they absolutely handle all of it. So, Billy, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to literally start the clock for 10 minutes right now. But let's get started. I think there's just so much going on in our world right now, and particularly the retail world with home furnishings, et cetera. Let me just ask you this first of all. What are some of the frustrations that you're hearing from people you're dealing with out there? What are the things that are top of mind for a lot of our retail friends right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. Naturally, everyone's talking about, tariffs, but business uncertainty. It's really created it's not a one size fits all answer. You have certain companies that still, kind of have their foot on the gas. I think you have a lot of customer or companies that are maybe coasting a bit, and then a few that are pumping the brakes. And it's everything in between. But cost of money is challenging, so that creates a tough environment for the consumer, creates a tough environment for capital spending. So new warehouse construction, new showroom construction, and put on top of that the cost of materials. Steel's gone up 42% since the end of January to today, and we don't even have tariffs yet. So it's just that uncertainty is creating a lot of, some are just, hey, we're gonna, we've been through these storms before, we're gonna stay on the gas. And I think the majority are,
Power through it, right?
yeah, the majority I think are either coasting or pumping the brakes a bit.
So, you can't do without your warehouse or your distribution center, your back room. So this is not something that you can just ignore. So what are the key things that people should be paying attention to right now in the middle of all of this chaos and uncertainty?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question because, if you wait until it becomes a problem again, it's too late. And so the fact that we are at a downturn, and if you do have the means to, take on projects or re-engineer what you have, or we're working with one client that, their strategy was to have a backroom warehouse at every showroom. And now they're saying, hey, we don't need two trucks at every showroom for the 3 or 4 deliveries we make that day. Let's collapse this in, have more centralization, and have fewer vehicles, fewer handling and touches of product, and use this as an opportunity to get more efficient. That lower tide in the marketplace shows where the rocks are, and where we can maybe operationally get perhaps even forced into some improvement.
So I want to make sure I'm hearing you because it sounds like you're saying, and this can be for a single store operator, can be for multiple stores. It sounds to me like you're saying, get into that back room of that warehouse. This is the time to also look for things like how are you utilizing the space. It's never a bad time to do that, but it sounds to me like you're saying, take advantage of this time right now to do that. Is that correct? And if so, what makes the most sense?
Absolutely. And then I'll give you another great example. One of the retailers we work with is that, they're doing a big exercise of looking at what inventory do they have right now that, perhaps is a saleable mix. So it's the 2 pieces of the sectional that don't have the 3 other pieces, or the nightstand that doesn't have the rest of the bedroom, or the stuff that isn't on display anywhere. And so it's not going to move out of the warehouse because it's not for sale anywhere. And so, looking at that inventory management, and then some are getting very analytical. People, there's a lot of talk about AI, but even just straight up pure play business intelligence, and, looking at your best sellers and making intentional purchase decisions that drive the inventory on hand versus decisions that may be made. Hey, we're getting a deal, and if you buy a trailer load, I'll give you this off. Well, do we have room for that in the warehouse, or should we be buying that much in the first place?
Well, this is, you're talking about something that we've discussed a lot over the last few years because the flow through the warehouse, if you will. The flow through the back room has been the hardest thing to manage and predict, right? Because we went from feast to famine, we had too much inventory, not enough inventory. So is right now a tough time because we're seeing sluggish sales in certain aspects, and so we got sluggish movement through that warehouse? I mean, talk a little bit about that and what people should be really looking at when it comes to that flow.
Yeah, it's a bit all over the place. And so we see some manufacturers, and actually we've started more recently working with more upstream. We mostly worked with retailers, but we're working with manufacturers. And our friend Satya over at Syria, he built a really big warehouse that he has in North Georgia, in the carpet capital of the world. And he offers direct shipment. And so we're seeing some retailers play into this where, is it okay? Are there certain transactions where we can go direct to consumer and the product that's being shipped perhaps isn't as susceptible to damage? And so, but that provokes a whole nother customer experience conversation to, you have a lovely room of furniture behind you, and I want to get you the rug before the furniture arrives so that we're not moving stuff around to put the rug down. And so there's just a lot of these dynamics of the complete customer experience, but how can I fulfill that in a good way, but perhaps remove the burden of owning the inventory and unnecessarily handling of the inventory? Because the more we touch it, the more times we can break it.
And it's interesting. I just was realizing, so this tariff question and a lot of the upheaval that has caused, um, is the fact that we're rethinking, that a lot of companies and individuals are rethinking where they're sourcing from. Doesn't that add another level of complexity to what we're talking about here? Because you
Absolutely.
talk when we're talking about flow, now all of a sudden, if I'm sourcing from somewhere else, talk a little bit about that. I guess we really need to factor that in as well.
Yeah, and so as we've moved into the tariff, conversations, I was just talking to a big retailer. We're moving into the summer season, so there's summer products, patio, grills, those kinds of products, and several of our customers, they're buyers in anticipation of all this tariff possibility. They bought significantly more than they would normally to to move exposure for in the event of any tariffs. And so we've seen a flood of this seasonal merchandise that comes into play, and hopefully they turn it all because they're going to hold it for more than a normal period of time.
There's a great concept of when you're talking about a lot and trying to stock up. And I guess also though, when we're talking about different lead times, as you change who your suppliers are, this is something else I guess that everybody needs to be thinking about, that it's not just changing your vendor, but also
Right.
what does that do to your timeline? Are you seeing that as an issue for some folks as well?
Yeah, and I mean, people are even looking at and selecting their partners and suppliers based on, those manufacturers that have significant distribution capabilities here in the U.S. And so they're leaning more into those distribution, capabilities. I mean, classic one that everybody is familiar with is Ashley, and Ashley have built out a fantastic distribution network domestically and including domestic supply on the manufacturing side of things. And so I think they position themselves very strong in the marketplace where customers can, expand their business and lean more into that distribution capability that the manufacturer is handling for them.
We got about another minute left, and I guess my question too is are there any, without talking about brands specifically, are there any resources that any retail owner out there should be aware of when it comes to assisting with all of this process and managing and things like that? You talked about AI. We know that that's something that we're hearing more and more about in every aspect of business. But
Yep.
are there tools that people should be considering right now in managing that back room?
I have an interesting response to that. And my response would be go ask AI. Go ask Copilot and prompt it for your specific situation. Say, I'm a three-store furniture retailer with this assortment of product. what should I be doing? And it's amazing what you'll get in response to that. But it really depends on the size and the business problem that you have. I think from a technology standpoint, I always find this is that we all have technology that's underneath our nose, that's available on our laptop, in our business systems today that we're not fully utilized. We're creatures of habit, and we all use Excel in a little bit different way, or Outlook, or whatever your flavor of choice is. And just I have a friend that I've made recently through a CEO network, and he spends an hour every Saturday studying AI. He's one of the most knowledgeable people I learned
Okay.
something from, but he's just made that intentional effort to say, it's here right now. We got to figure it out. And so, but you know, I deflect the question to ask AI, but I'd be glad to help anyone, you know, with
Well,
any of those kinds of questions, and try to the best of our ability get you to the right person in our network.
listen, I
We might
appreciate
even
it.
be able to help you.
I appreciate that. That's a great way to end it. That's 10 minutes, man. We're up. Billy
Thank
Lindler,
you.
USSI Partners, thank you very much. And this is 10 out of 10. And I'm Mark Schumacher.